Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week is an award-winning stand-up comedian, television writer, cast member of the Netflix hit series Tires, and former fourth grade teacher. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, Chip Chantry. Hi, Chip. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we are excited too, Chip. Looking forward to a great and I'm sure fun conversation with you. And I have to tell you, normally what we like to do is we kind of turn the clock back and go back to when our guests' lives and careers kind of started and how they got their start. And we're going to do that, but not right up front. What I'd like to do right up front is turn the clock forward a little bit, specifically to December 27th, when rumor has it that you're going to be coming back to the comedy capital of the world, Soul Joel's in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. How cool is that? And is it true?
It is very true. The heart of Pottstown. I'm gonna be there Christmas week. I can't wait. There's Vegas, there's New York City, there's Los Angeles, and there's Pottstown, Pennsylvania, right off of 422 Ridge Pike. I can't wait. And in all honesty, it's one of my favorite places to go. I love doing Joel's room. I just like being. You guys have both been there, right? I mean, it's just such a cool historic. My grandparents used to dance there. Glenn Miller was like the big room, and so it's just like it's a beautiful venue. It's a fun venue. I can't wait to go.
And you grew up not too far from there, right, Chip?
Spitting distance, Eagleville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, right down the street pretty much. So it's kind of a nice homecoming for me. People are home for the holidays. Maybe some people from high school or some family are in town. So you guys are all there. You can bring your families or avoid your family. After that heated argument with like Aunt Barb gets a little crazy the day after Christmas, you're like, I need some 2 hours to myself. Come out to Soul Joel's. I'll make you laugh. Forget about your family for 90 minutes.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world-class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs.
So, Chip, since we already turned the clock ahead, we're going to turn it back now. What was life like growing up for you, and when did you start to get into comedy?
This is like a Christmas Carol, by the way. Like I feel like the ghost of Christmas future, the ghost of Christmas past, and I'm gonna find out all the error of my ways. I should have stayed in grad school and not done stand-up comedy until December 27th. But it goes way. I mean, we go way back to the ghost of Christmas past. I was always obsessed with stand-up comedy as a kid. I grew up in the 80s during the comedy boom where you couldn't turn on the TV without finding at least 5 different stand-up comedy TV shows, like almost like any hour of the day. There were MTV's Half Hour Comedy Hour, VH1 had it, HBO. Everywhere you turned, there was a stand-up comedy show. And I watched those religiously. I recorded them on my VHS tapes. All my friends were watching DuckTales and the Ninja Turtles or whatever. I was watching stand-up comedy. I was just obsessed with. I just thought it was so cool, so different, and I always loved making people laugh. I was a quiet kid. I was a good student. I was kind of a nerdy, anxious kid, but like in my head, I was like, I'm funnier than everybody in this class right now, and so I was always obsessed with it. But it's like, how do you? It's not a job. It's not a career you can have. Like, I didn't understand how any of this worked. So I did theater in high school. I was like the big theater kid and like just loved being on stage. I was so comfortable. I don't know if you guys feel this too. You guys are podcast hosts. I love being in front of people. I love being on stage. I love getting laughs. I can do, like people. I'll name drop right now. I just opened for Sarah Silverman at the Met in Philadelphia, and that's a 3,500 seat theater. And people are like, "Oh my God, are you nervous?" No, this is what I was born to do. I'm not nervous at all. But you make me talk to one or two people that I haven't met before, like strangers. Like, oh, you have to mingle at a party. I'm I'm the worst. I can't do it. Oh, you know, are you the same way, Bill? Like it's just it's like talking to girls in high school. Are you kidding me? Like I can make them laugh and I can be funny, but it's like have a conversation and try to ask somebody out. No, like no, God, no, I can't do that. So I was always so much more comfortable in front of a group of people than that. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while. And I did the college thing, and I got my psych degree. I got a teaching degree. I started teaching, and then my brother is also in the arts. He was in a band for years. He's a great drummer, very talented, and I was always the funny guy that hung out. And they they were like, "You should do comedy. You should do comedy." And I can play. By the way, I can play chords on a guitar. I'm not good, so I knew I was never going to be good enough to be a musician. But I love music, but I wanted to perform. So what happened was a wonderful stroke of luck. They booked me to open for them one night at a bar in Philadelphia without telling me. They just booked me. I was walking through the city of Philadelphia. I saw a flyer and I was like, oh, it's my brother's band. And it said, with comedy guest Chip C. And I
Oh,
was like, oh,
my.
I had to call my brother. This is how long ago. It was on a payphone. Called my brother on a payphone. I was like, what is this? And they're like, yeah, we were going to tell you tonight. 2 weeks from tonight, you're opening for us. So I wrote some. They knew I had this secret notebook of like joke ideas I had, but never knowing what to do with it. And then I spent those 2 weeks like honing these jokes, trying to write 10 minutes of material. I went up and figured I would bomb, but it's like I said I did stand up comedy once in my life. Check it off my bucket list, and then go skydiving or whatever the next thing was. And it turned out to be probably the best and worst thing that happened to me. It was a very supportive crowd. It's a lot of friends and family there, so they knew me. I still viscerally remember that first wave of laughter that hit me when
Wow.
from state. And like I wasn't a good comic. I wasn't very funny, but they thought I was funny for my first time. And just there was a room full of it was not a very big room. It was about 60 or so people in this room. And I can remember where people were sitting, and just that first wave of laughter, uh, sex, drugs, whatever, doesn't matter. There's nothing compared to what that was. And for almost 2 decades now, I've been chasing that feeling right there. And I haven't stopped since. And I was just like, I'm done. Like that night, I couldn't sleep. I was just so amped up for like 2 days. I couldn't believe it. And then I've just been on this journey, for better or worse, for almost 2 decades, trying to recapture the magic of that first night.
Well, Chip, I have to tell you, first and foremost, I commend you because I can't help but think it's extra challenging opening up for a band. People are going to see and hear music, and here comes this comedian. So that's even kind of more pressure on you to be good and be entertaining because they're waiting for the bass drum to start.
Exactly. And now I was very lucky because it was a smaller room and it was a lot of people who knew me. So like they knew we all kind of knew each other. So it was, I had, it was a friendly audience. But in general, you're absolutely right. I've been asked to open for bands since then. And blanket, I almost always say no because it's not, comedy isn't, stand up comedy is a delicate little flower
Mhm.
that needs just the perfect environment. It needs the right food and the right minerals and the right air and the whatever. It has to exist in a place where people want to see it. You can't spring comedy on a group of people who aren't ready for it. They don't want it. And it's I by the way, I've been in so over the years, especially years ago, before comedy sort of had this resurgence the last couple of years, where I'd be in a bar in Northeast Philly where they would just at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night turn off all the TVs to the Flyers game and say, "Hey, we're having comedy now." And then me being 6 months into comedy, I'm supposed to tell these people jokes. I mean, I've had fist fights and knives pulled on me, and I mean, just because they're not. That's not fair to them. They're not here for comedy, and yeah. So usually a band, it's such a different vibe where you're not there. You have to be sitting. You have to be ready. Comedy should never be just out in the bar. If you're doing a show if any comedy producers there, you you want to be up in an attic somewhere, or down in a basement, in a back corner somewhere, this little clubhouse that's hidden away from the rest of the world, where it's just you and the audience, and you're all
Yeah.
in it together. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster.
Well, You kind of bring up a good point, and the one question I wanted to ask you about was because that reminds me of kind of open mics. And I'm wondering, did you do a lot of open mics? Was because a lot of comics like that, that's what they do. They do the open mics, and that's grueling that you have to get there and you have to, I don't know if you still have to do this, but sign up for a spot, then you could wait there hours and you're basically doing your show for other comics.
Yeah.
So how was that experience for you?
I mean, I did it for years, and I definitely, so when I first started, there wasn't much going on comedy wise in the city of Philadelphia, or honestly in the in the world in general. Comedy was really in a valley. This is like the early to mid 2000s. There wasn't much going on. And then luckily there's been a resurgence of comedy, especially with YouTube and TikTok and podcasts like this, like people listen to comedy. So then comedy got this resurgence. But we were really in a no man's land. So just to perform, we just had we had to make our own shows. And we did this show in Center City, Philadelphia, almost 20 years ago, where it was myself and two other comics, and we started this open mic where it was, again, people who didn't want to see us. They were just there to watch the Monday Night Football game, but then we're there in the corner doing our thing. And I mean, I grew a thick skin. I hope neither of you right now are worried about offending me. I am dead inside. You cannot hurt me anymore. After those years of doing those open mics, nothing can hurt me emotionally. So don't worry about that. But it's very grueling. The one thing I will say about that is there's a couple different types of open mics. There's like a general open mic that's music and poetry and comedy and whatever. I always tell people, if you're starting comedy, if you're thinking of starting comedy, go to a comedy open mic. That's just for comedy. Again, because if you hear a sad poem and then somebody playing a folk song, sometimes people aren't ready to hear jokes. They just don't. They're not ready. Sometimes they are. A lot of times they're not. But going back to what you said, you're exactly right, Rosie. You are just performing for other comics a lot. Like I think some people think it's like, oh well, there's a comedy crowd and you're going to tell these new jokes. No, it's just other comics usually. And the best thing to do, I wish I learned this years ago, but I know it now is, and somebody finally told me this, and I realized that when I'm doing a comedy show, like on the December 27th at Soul Joel's, go to souljoels.com to get tickets. I'm there for the audience. I'm there to make the audience laugh. I'm getting paid. That's my job. I'm there for the audience. When I'm at an open mic, I'm there for me. It's my time to work on stuff, to try stuff. Sure, I want to make the other people laugh, but it's like going to the gym or like practice as compared to the big game on Sunday. The game is the big game on Sunday. Or the show is the big game on Sunday. Open mic is practice, going to the gym, getting your reps, and just feeling through this new material that you have, these ideas, and knowing that, hey, it's a lower bar, it's a different gear. It's not as, but again, when you first start out, I would be crushed when I didn't do well, or I'd be elated when I did. So I wish I would have known to sort of temper that emotionally right off the bat. So if any new comedians are there, go in without a lot of expectations on an open mic and just be there for you. It's there for you to practice.
Yeah, Chip, I have to tell you, I think that's great advice. And I knew that there was some overlap with your comedy and your teaching. And one of the things that I'm trying to figure out is, because it was quite a few years, if my math is correct, that you were doing both. How were you able to balance that?
I didn't sleep for a decade. There was a decade where I was exhausted, and I felt bad too, because I don't think I was ever derelict in my duty of teaching, but I was tired all the time, but I really I had two full-time jobs basically. I was doing the school teacher thing during the day, and then going out at night and on weekends, and I'd be in Austin, Texas on the weekend, and then flying back and teaching on Monday morning. And so it was difficult. I think one of the hardest things for me, at least, I was teaching fourth grade, so these 9-year-olds. And I really loved it. I enjoyed the kids, but I was Batman. I was living two lives. I had a secret identity. I didn't want the kids to know about it. Some kids found out. Some parents found out. Luckily, I had my faculty and my principals that I had were great. They were very supportive. And but like I was always very nervous. So I was living that double life. So I was actually pretty serious in the classroom, which I feel bad about now. Going back on it, I was like, oh, I could have let loose more and just had more fun with the kids. But it was almost like, all right, this is school time. Let me put on a tie and just try to forget about this. And because I didn't want parents to think, oh, this guy's a comedian, he's just a clown. I was like, tried to be like extra professional. I was like, almost to a fault, I think, because I was leading that double life. Yeah, but it got to the point. My now wife, was like, you got to choose. You got to do one or the other. She's like, I don't care which one you do, but it was just too much.
Yeah, it sounds grueling, and we have something in common because I also teach
Oh,
school.
what do you teach?
Well, music right
Oh,
now,
that's great.
but
Yeah.
yeah, the fourth grade, woo! I'm wondering how much material do you draw from your teaching days?
It's great. It was so funny because I didn't talk about it a lot because again, that double life that happened, it was like I didn't want to be known as the teacher comedian. I wanted to be the comedian. And then that was a separate thing. So I feel like to a certain extent, I wish I would have taken more notes and I would have been much more I would have talked about it more because I actually I work with teachers now. Sometimes I work for a company now that part time where we do programs for teachers about mental health and wellness and just some other things. I talk about using humor in the classroom, and I wish I would have taken more. But they do. There were so many things, and I definitely took a decent amount, but not even just the stories about, as you know, Rosie, about like the crazy things that happen in a classroom or whatever. There was that, but just viewing the world from a 9-year-old's point of view is that's what a comedian does. Like that's our job to a certain extent, is just to kind of take the world in with wonder and like look at it from an angle that you never think you see. You know what I mean? Like there's some things I try to be very creative, but then a 9-year-old would just say something that would just blow my mind. Be like, how did you think of that? How did you come up with that? And it's like, I need to write that down right now. I mean, that's it. Like, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. And sometimes this isn't the most creative thing in the world, but this was again without thinking, without knowing what she was saying. It was the day after Mardi Gras one year. So it was Mardi Gras happened, it was Mardi Gras in February, whatever. And this little girl comes into my class the next morning wearing all these Mardi Gras beads. And I was trying to be nice. I was like, oh, Danielle, those are very pretty. Where'd you get those? And real proud, she just goes, oh, my mom won them last night. And I was like, oh, okay, won them. It was a trivia contest. I don't think that's how she won them. Let's not get into that. But she doesn't know. And so that's just like, boom, there we go. You were just looking at the world in a much different way than I am right now. Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Chip, when did writing for television enter the scene for you?
It was funny. I had taken a sabbatical from teaching in 2013, 2012, 13, that school year. And I was kind of burnt out by that point, and I really wanted to pursue this. So I was able to take that year to travel a little bit, to do some more stand-up, to focus on that. And I knew I had to come back to teaching you have to come back for at least a year, or you can't just take a sabbatical and then leave. So I knew I'd at least one more year. So I ended up doing 2 more years because, I couldn't just take off and just do stand-up full time. It doesn't pay the bills. And at least the level that I was at. And, but my now wife, again, she was like, you have to do something. So I said, all right, this was June of 2015. I said, and I'm not a very big believer in like putting your energy out there and it comes back at you or whatever, manifesting things. But maybe it does work because I was like, all right, I'm going to take one more school year. I'm going to save up as much money as I possibly can. And then I'm just out. I'm done. I'm walking away and we'll see what happens. And I left for summer break that year thinking I'm coming back for one last school year. About a month later, I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's working on a show in New York. And he said, they need another writer. I showed him some of your stuff. They like you. They want you to come up for a meeting. And I never went back to school. I started in August. And I just ghosted my school. I just never showed up again. Now, like
You
obviously,
call them?
what's that? No, I did call them, but but it was just like in June. It was like, all right, everybody, see you in September, and then I never went back. And like, of course, I told my very close friends and my administrators, my principal, I was, working with them and like, hey, I think I'm leaving. And actually, the funniest part was, so I got this job writing for a TV show, and I was all excited. And two things happened. It was very scary. I started in like the beginning of August, but at the end of August, I have to start teaching again if this doesn't work out. And so I didn't want to quit immediately. And I had told my principal, so I was at least being polite, like, hey, I'm taking this job. I think I'm leaving. So maybe have somebody in mind to take over for me. And I was going to let them know as soon as possible. So I was at this TV job for 2 weeks. And I had to go to my producer, my boss, who was very sweet guy, but very intimidating. And I had to be like, hey, how am I doing? Like, are you going to fire me? Should I just go back? And so finally he was just like, no, you're doing a great job. Stick around. And so like I was able to quit. But my principal, she was sweet, she was great. She didn't want to give too much information. Like she's like, it's your private thing. You haven't announced it on Facebook yet. You haven't on social media that you're leaving teaching, that you got this new job. So school started and she told all the other faculty members at the first meeting, she's like, well, Chip has left us, and I can't say much about it, but he wishes you all well, and like whatever. And she told me that the next day, and I was like, you need to tell them about my TV show right now. Like it just sounded like the shadiest thing, like I got arrested or something happened where I was asked to leave. I was like, no, tell everyone what happened immediately. It was just like,
Oh
you
my
need to tell
God.
them that and she was like, oh no. And then the next day she's like, Chip got a TV writing job. So yeah. So yeah, so it was great. And I was on my way then and never looked back.
Wow, that's inspiring, that and you were building the energy for that to happen. I know you don't believe in the energy thing, but all those years that you were doing both jobs, you were setting the stage for it.
Yeah, and I think I was ready for it too. Like I didn't want to leave for nothing, but I think I did set that groundwork of like my writing ethic and my work ethic and the way that I did that. I was like I did all of these sketches that I wrote and these things the favors that I did for other people where I was just writing jokes constantly, and it's like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to take this on now.
I want to fast forward. I mean, there's other questions I want to ask you about the comedy, but I want to make sure we talk about your show, the Tires. How
Yep.
did that role come about on Netflix?
That was actually, and again, it's who you know, and it's who knows you. And I'm also not a big necessarily big believer in like networking. People talk about like networking and like, and I think that's great. But I think especially with comedy, and well, I think with a lot of things, the networking isn't just handing out your business card and meeting people and being at a party or whatever. It's like showing up, doing the job, and proving to as many people as you can that you can do a job, and that type of networking where if somebody asks you a favor, like, hey, can you act in this sketch? Can you do this? Or can you help me write this thing? Or I need somebody to open for whatever. You do those things and you're networking through that. And then for those years, I was proving myself as somebody who showed up, who was responsible, who was professional, who was funny and could do the job. So, the it's actually the same guy who got me my first TV writing job. He is now one of the, I guess, producers or creators of the show Tires, and they just had a small role for me. And this is before Netflix was involved, so they had made this project, and they wrote this. I think it was a 6 episode series, and they were like, we're just doing this. We're going to shoot it and on our budget. And they did it. And they asked some friends and they asked me to be a part of it. And it was just a kind of a whirlwind day or two where I just kind of came in and did the job. And it was so much fun. We get to improvise a little bit. And then I forgot about it. I didn't think much of it. Like it was like, oh, that was a fun. I got to do some stuff with some guys I haven't seen in a while. And it was a very funny script and it was a fun part for me. And I just went about my life and forgot about it. And about 6 months later, I got a text. He said, Netflix just bought us. You're going to be on Netflix. And
Wow.
so it was just completely out of the, like, I just, so it was like, it kind of went in the back door, where I was just like, I was a part of this thing. And again, if any new comics are listening to this or anybody, it was, I did the work and they knew they could rely on me. So it was like, I didn't go through that process of like auditioning or whatever. It's like, oh, we got this guy. He can do this thing. And then, next thing I know, I'm watching myself on Netflix, which is just, it's very strange. very
That's
strange. But
such a
again, it's who you
hopeful
know. Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
It really is for comics up and coming to hear that and be inspired and directed by that.
Yeah. And you don't know who is going to make it. Like when you first start out, you have all these different people in your like comedy class. Like you're the people who started around the same time as you. And like some people kind of right away get really big or popular. They're just very talented. Some people, it takes them years to like slow burn to like figure out what their voice is or whatever. And I just say yes to stuff. Like do as many projects as you can. And because you don't know who that person is that's going to be big. Like the guy that I'm talking about, right as soon as I saw him perform, I was like, this guy's funny, this guy's talented. I want to work with him. So whenever he asked me to do something, I said yes. And then that got me my writing job and got me my Netflix job. There's another comic I'm thinking of that um, he just sort of kind of sputtered along for years, and just nothing seemed to hit. And now he is a huge star because something hit a couple years ago for him where everything aligned, and now he is this big name. And so it's like you work with these people, and you hope that one of them makes it big and pulls the rest of you with them, and they're going to pull the people who they want to hang out with and that hopefully do the job. So I always try to present myself as somebody who's, hey, I'm cool. Hopefully I'm cool to work with, and I'll do the job for you.
Who was the comic?
I don't want to, I'm not going to mention any names. I can't say it. Can't
Well,
say it.
Chip, I'll mention a comic, and that's you, and I'll mention a special, and that's Move Closer. And I think anyone who watches that, that's going to elevate you because I have to tell you, you've got a great show in Tires on Netflix, but I think you've got the best special on YouTube right now in Move Closer, hilarious from start to finish. So how did that special all come about?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's like I say to people, it's one of the few things I'm proud of in my life. It is something that I'm really proud of. I did two albums. I did an album in like 2012 and one in like 2018. Audio albums. Back when it was CDs, I put out my first CD. I was so excited, thinking that this is the future. And I used to sell my CDs after shows, and they would sell like hotcakes. And it was just like, oh my God, like I would make some money doing a show, and then I'd sell a stack of CDs for like 10, $15, and I'm making all this money. And then there was just one day I'm going to call it maybe 2014, that it just stopped. That just nobody bought CDs anymore. But anyway, I was building to this, and people want to put out these specials, and they go through whether it's Netflix or HBO or Comedy Central or whatever. And I didn't have those connections to those. I wasn't not that you have to be in New York or LA, but it definitely helps. And one of my, actually, and again, this goes to somebody that I met on that first show, that my friend who now is on Tires, he got me that first writing job in New York. There was another guy who was a producer on the show, young guy, very talented, and we just hit it off. And he knew I was a hard worker. I've written on about 5 different TV shows over the years. Every single show that I wrote on came from that first TV show. It's because it's like producers, they see people and they're like, okay, I want to use these people. Like I think Adam Sandler is a perfect example. Adam Sandler has his people, and he uses a lot of the same actors, the same crew, because he knows them, he likes them, he trusts them, they're his friends. So why not just keep using them? You use the same plumber all of the time or the same electrician because you trust them, right? There's no difference in show business. So I kept getting hired from a couple of these different producers because this producer spun off to this show, and hey, we need a writer. Let's get Chip. He's a good guy. We can use him. And so my friend Thomas, he would use me for different jobs, and I sports blooper show and this and that project. I was out in LA. We had a show that we wrote for Howie Mandel had a show, and we wrote a show for him out in LA right before the pandemic. And we just always liked each other. We worked together very well. And then, especially during the pandemic, the TV business is so strange right now that he was like, let's go to YouTube. Let's go really produce our own things. And the first big project was, we're going to make you a name. Let's get you a special. So my buddy Thomas was co-producer with me. We produced this special. We did it right at Helium in Philly, which is kind of like my home comedy club in the city of Philadelphia. and we got the crew together. We shot. It was about a 4 camera shoot, and it was so much fun to do. We did it on a it was an afternoon shoot. We did a matinee show because I knew the reason I did a matinee show. They do matinees sometimes now, like on Saturdays and Sundays. I wanted everybody in that room to be there specifically to see Chip Chantry. Like there weren't any bachelorette parties. There weren't any couples out for date night or birthdays or whatever. It was like, if you're there at 4 o'clock on a Saturday, you are there to see me. And that's what I wanted. Even if the room wasn't filled, everybody there was to see me. And it was just like such a fun event. I did about an hour and 15 minutes. We cut it down to about 50. So we took about 25 minutes out and cut it down to what we thought was the best, 50 minutes. And it's been great. It's been so much fun. And then really what we did too, and it's just the nature of the business, that 50-minute, that quote unquote hour special, I was very proud of it. But it's also about those clips that I put out, those pieces from it. Because if you don't know me, and I appreciate anybody listening. If you want to move closer, watch it. I think you'll really like it. But like, people might not invest an hour of their time into a comedian they don't know. But if they see a 1-minute clip, they're like, okay, I'll watch this guy. And then, oh, this guy's funny. And then another 1-minute clip comes up. And then all of a sudden I'm fishing for them. And they're like, oh, they've seen me 3 or 4 times. This guy's funny. Let me follow him. Oh, he's got a special. Let's watch the full special. So it's honest. For better or worse, it's the nature of the beast of like giving them little pieces for free. I mean, the special is for free too, but like you give them those little pieces, get them hooked, so they'll watch the full special.
Yeah. And Chip, I just have one last thing I want to say after watching the special, and that is, I think when you come to Soul Joel's on December 27th and every show thereafter, your walk-up music should be the Action News theme, because then everybody can stand.
Yeah, exactly. Stand out of attention and stand out of respect. Exactly. And by the way, that was that was maybe the thing. One of the things I was most proud of was that joke and just the reception that it got. And Action News itself, growing up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, we were an Action News family, and you grew up watching Jim Gardner, and that was the thing. And so it was just such a thrill for Action News to pick it up. And a bunch of I'm actually friends with one of the reporters. The news anchor is a great guy and a good friend of mine. But like the other reporters found out about me and followed me on Instagram. I'm like, oh, this is wild. Like, these people know who I am now. I'm just this kid from Philly. And it was nice to sort of pay homage to the beauty of Action News.
Yeah.
And especially that theme song. So it's kind of my love letter to them and to the city of Philadelphia. Yeah.
Well, if you've grown up in this area, everyone knows that song. It's brilliant, actually. They pack so much into not that many seconds of a song.
No.
And yet everyone knows that song, so that's fantastic.
I don't know if you guys know this. This is so funny. So it started, I think, in the late 70s. It was like when I think the thumbnail sketch is that Channel 6 in Philadelphia was like the third network. They didn't have anything, and then they brought in this new team of Jim Gardner, and I think Jim O'Brien. It's just these other guys, and it was this crack team that by the way, the movie Anchorman, made by Adam McKay, who is a Philadelphia native, is based sort of, like there is some sketches based on Action News, but it was this new thing, and then all of a sudden they became number one, and that song was a big part of it. And it reminds me of the Rocky theme. It's very orchestral, and it's just the drum, and it's so recognizable. In the 90s, so fast forward 20 years, in the 90s, they re-recorded it, and I think it was with the London Philharmonic. It was this beautiful whatever, and it was the same song, but a different arrangement. It was like a little bit slower, and it was just a new updated version. And they're like, here it is. Within 48 hours, I think it is, they had to change it back because they got so much hate and threats. They're like, what are you doing? And it wasn't even like a different song. It was the same song, just a slightly different version. And people were like, no, we're not having it. This is the theme song. This is how we live our lives. This is what it is. And I respect that. As a Philadelphian, I respect that.
Yeah, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean,
Nope.
that's the truth.
Exactly.
Well, Chip, my gosh, it's been so much fun. Folks, if you're in the Philadelphia area, December 27th, go to Soul Joel's and watch Chip do his thing because he is fantastic and you will be so happy that you did. And Chip, we thank you so much. We'll have you back when you're promoting something else.
Anytime.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Thank you guys. This was good. This is so much fun.
Absolutely. And folks, thank you as always for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
But I am an animal lover. My wife and I, we got animals. We got 2 cats and a dog at home. They're the best. We have Ernie and Gary, our cats. We have Franklin's our dog. Franklin's my guy. I love him. He's this little like Shih Tzu kind of poodle terrier. He's like a little silver guy. He's 20 pounds, but he thinks he's Rottweiler. He thinks he's tough. He's the best. We got worried about Franklin recently, though. We thought he was losing his vision. We thought he might be going blind because we would drop food on the floor. He wouldn't be able to find it. So we took him to the vet to get his annual checkup. We want to see if we get his eyes checked. But you know how you're an adult and you have to ask another adult a stupid question? I had to do this because we're at the vet and he's checking him out. And I had to say to the vet, I was like, excuse me, doctor, is there an eye test you can do for a dog? Because, like, think about it. The dog can't read the chart. He's a dog. It's like Franklin can't get on one of those machines and be like, what's better, boy, 1 or 2? He don't know. But to my surprise and my delight, the doctor was like, no, there's an eye diagnostic test we can do for canines. I was like, oh, great. Do we have to make another appointment, go see a specialist? He's like, no, we can do it right here. Here's what the eye test is for a dog. If you don't know, it's a little high tech. Let me kind of walk you through it. My dog Franklin is sitting on the exam table, and the doctor reaches back and he grabs a handful of cotton balls. Got a handful of cotton balls. And then what he did was he took the cotton balls and he whipped them on my dog's face. Just sidearm, a bunch of cotton balls on my dog. And my dog went like that. And the doctor, who went to medical school, looks me in the eyes and said, he's fine. $300 for that. This is my last comedy show ever. I'm gonna become a dog optometrist. Set up shop in Rittenhouse, charge rich people $300 a pop with cotton balls to their schnauzers. They're like, ah, he's fine, $300. Oh, this one's got astigmatism. That's an extra 100. I have no idea. Sell them dog glasses for $50.
This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty & Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exeter, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.